Today, we are unpacking a framework that entirely flips how we process life's unpredictable roller coaster.
It really does change everything.
We're pulling insights from a detailed breakdown of Spencer Johnson's concept, peaks and valleys, or, picos e valles, if you're reading the Portuguese translation.
Yeah, and the source material drops us right into a rainy New York cafe. We meet this guy named Michael, whose career is just tanking.
Oh, and his home life is a total mess, too. He's struggling everywhere.
Exactly. And he's having lunch with a colleague, Anne, who recently survived a very similar downward spiral. But she's strangely thriving now.
Which makes Michael wonder what her secret is.
So she shares a fable with him. And on the surface, it's a pretty simple story. It's about a dissatisfied young man living in a bleak valley who climbs a mountain to seek advice from a wise old man.
Which, I admit, sounds like standard self-help territory at first glance, like you climb a mountain, talk to a guru, right?
It definitely has that vibe initially.
But digging into these notes, this isn't just about finding a silver lining or forcing a smile. It is a completely different operating system for reality.
It really is a profound paradigm shift, because when the young man reaches the top of this mountain, he immediately starts complaining about how awful the valley is.
And the old man does something really interesting. He stops him and asks him to physically point out where the valley ends and the peak begins.
Right, which you can't do.
Because they are the exact same piece of earth. You can't separate them physically, and you can't separate them metaphorically either.
And that's when the old man delivers the core revelation of the whole framework. He says, the mistakes you make during today's good times create tomorrow's bad times.
Wow.
Yeah, and the wise things you do in today's bad times create tomorrow's good times. They are inextricably linked.
Reading that line in the source material, it immediately made me think of a hangover.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right, because drinking way too much at the absolute peak of the party is the direct manufacturing plant for the deep, painful valley of the next morning.
Totally.
You don't just wake up with a headache by accident. Your actions during the peak quite literally created the valley.
And that physical cause and effect translates perfectly to our professional and personal lives. But, we really have to distinguish between external events and internal states here.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the framework acknowledges that we cannot control everything. Sudden corporate layoffs happen.
Illness happens.
Exactly. Macroeconomic crashes happen. Those are external valleys. What we have absolute control over is our internal peak or valley. And that is dictated entirely by how we choose to interpret and act on that external event.
Okay, I'm going to push back pretty hard on this.
Go for it.
Because it sounds elegant on paper, sitting in a cafe or on a mountaintop. But let's look at the real world for a second. Let's say you just got fired from a job you loved. You are in a valley. You can't just choose to feel differently. You have a mortgage. You have kids. The panic is real.
Of course it is.
So just deciding to be on an internal peak feels dangerously close to toxic positivity, doesn't it?
That is a vital distinction to make. And the text actually addresses the getting fired scenario directly. It's not about pretending you aren't upset.
Okay, good.
Yeah, if you get fired feeling angry, resentful, and adopting a victim mentality, that's the default human reaction. That is the internal valley. But look at the practical, mechanical outcome of staying in that mindset.
Right, what happens next?
Exactly. If you walk into your next job interview radiating bitterness, complaining about your last boss, looking completely defeated, you make yourself entirely unhireable.
You are basically ensuring that the valley lasts longer. You become the architect of your continued unemployment.
You're digging the hole deeper. But consider the alternative mechanism. You experience the exact same external event, getting fired. You allow yourself to process the shock, sure, but then you choose to believe this is a forced opportunity to find a company with a better culture.
So you reframe it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You spend your time researching new skills rather than ruminating on the unfairness of it all. So when you walk into that next interview, you are upbeat, forward-looking, and prepared.
Which makes you a highly attractive candidate.
Exactly. Your internal belief about the event quite literally altered your external reality.
So you stop digging the grave and you start building a ladder.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, when you are in the thick of a valley, how do you actually start that climb? Because the natural human instinct when everything goes wrong is to just freeze.
It is.
It feels physically impossible to see that opportunity when you're terrified.
And the reason it feels impossible comes down to human psychology, specifically the function of the ego. The source material points out that our ego's primary function in a valley is to distort truth.
Distort the truth. How so?
When things go wrong, the ego generates this intense fear. It catastrophizes. It makes the situation look infinitely worse than it actually is, tricking you into believing that this valley is your permanent reality.
Oh, it's the ultimate doom scroll in your own brain. You start thinking, I lost this client, which means I'll lose my job, which means I'll lose my house, which means my family will leave me.
Yes, exactly. The ego tells you that you are synonymous with your circumstances. To break that cycle, the old man teaches that you have to bypass the ego entirely.
And how do you do that?
By asking one very grounding question. What is the pure truth in this situation? You have to force yourself to find the hidden good.
The book provides a really heavy personal story from the old man to illustrate this mechanism, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
Like long before he lived on the peak, his wife became severely ill and he was just paralyzed by the stress.
It's a very relatable kind of pain.
Totally. He felt like he was drowning in this massive, unfixable personal valley. He couldn't cure her, so he felt entirely hopeless. But then he finally asked himself, what is the truth here?
Right. And the pure truth had nothing to do with his inability to play doctor.
Exactly. The truth was simply, I love her. So he asked, what is the most loving thing I can do right now?
And if you pay attention to the psychological shift happening in that moment, it's fascinating. The fear doesn't just vanish magically, it dissipates because the focus radically shifts.
That is the pattern that really stood out to me in the notes. When we suffer in a valley, our instinct is to focus obsessively inward.
Oh, absolutely.
It is all about my pain, my unfair treatment, my ruined plans. But he escaped his valley by projecting his focus entirely outward. He asked how he could be useful and loving to someone else.
When you focus on your own ego, you are just trapped in a feedback loop of your own anxiety. By focusing outward on being useful, you are stepping out of the ego's domain.
That makes a lot of sense.
The pure truth is rarely about our own pride. It's usually about our connection to reality and other people. Taking action based on that truth gets you moving again.
But just moving isn't enough, right? Like if I'm lost in the woods and I just start running in a random direction to feel proactive, I might just run deeper into the forest.
Exactly. You need a destination. You need something powerful enough to pull you up the mountain when the terrain gets incredibly steep and you just want to quit.
And this brings us to a really cool concept in the text called the sensible vision, or vision sensible. And I want to be super clear for anyone listening. This is not a vision board.
No, not at all.
This is not just wishing for $1 million or like saying empty affirmations in the mirror. It is a highly specific, intense sensory exercise.
The critical word here is sensory. You're tasked with imagining a realistic, specific future peak using all 5 senses.
So you really have to place yourself there.
You do. You have to ask yourself, what do I hear? What does the air smell like? What am I physically touching? You build this future reality in your mind so vividly that you begin to actually enjoy the hard, grueling work required to get there.
Because your brain already anticipates the reward.
Exactly.
Let's translate this from the fable to the modern brain. Because in the story, the young man gets trapped in a valley during a massive storm. He is freezing in the mud, facing a flooded, raging river he has to cross.
A literal and metaphorical valley.
Right. And his ego takes over with what the text calls a fearful vision. He literally pictures himself drowning. He's physically paralyzed by it.
Which is what fear does to us.
But when he forces himself to use the sensible vision, feeling the sun on a future peak, smelling the pine trees, the fear drops, and he actually finds the strength to throw a rope across the river. But, I mean, why does that actually work? It sounds almost like a magic trick.
I know it sounds like magic, but it is fundamentally grounded in how our neurology operates. Because the amygdala, which is the fear center of your brain, struggles to differentiate between a vividly imagined sensory experience and reality.
Wait, really? I can't tell the difference.
Not effectively, no. When the young man was imagining drowning, his body was dumping cortisol and adrenaline into his system, triggering a full physiological freeze response.
Just based on his imagination.
Exactly. But by forcing his brain to vividly process the smell of pine and the warmth of the sun, he is chemically overriding his body's panic response. He is feeding his nervous system data that says, we have a future and it is safe.
Wow.
That lowers the cortisol enough for his executive functioning to come back online, which allows him to actually throw the rope.
That makes me think of programming a GPS in your car.
How so?
Well, you can't just get in your car and yell, hey, drive me away from this terrible neighborhood. The GPS can't process a negative command. It just won't move.
Right, it needs an actual destination.
Exactly. You have to input a highly specific, verifiable destination. You need an exact address, the sights, the sounds, the feelings, or you're just going to drive in circles forever. The sensible vision is the exact address.
The GPS analogy captures the mechanism perfectly. You need the specific coordinates to override the system's inertia. But, the framework has a really fascinating twist once you actually arrive at that address.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's say you do the hard work, you cross the river, and you finally reach the top of the mountain. Your career is booming, your relationships are solid, you are finally safe.
That is the dream. You plant your flag, crack open a beverage, and just relax. Right.
Well, according to the source material, planting your flag and relaxing makes the peak the absolute most dangerous place you could be.
This is a part of the deep dive that really caught me off guard. Why do people lose their good times? The notes point out that it is almost always arrogance heavily disguised as confidence.
It's the ego flipping its strategy.
Yep.
Remember, in the valley, the ego uses fear to paralyze you. Well, on the peak, the ego uses arrogance to blind you. You start believing that your success is entirely due to your own innate brilliance.
You forget all the help you had.
Yes. You forget the hard work, the lucky breaks, and the humility that actually got you up the mountain. You stop being curious. You stop listening to feedback because you think you have all the answers. And crucially, you start consuming way too many resources.
You start acting like the peak is a permanent state of being, like the money will always flow, the market will always be up.
Which is never true.
Exactly. So to stay on a peak longer, the old man says you have to do the exact opposite. You have to be radically humble. You have to actively practice gratitude, continually try to improve even when things are good, and explicitly save your resources for the inevitable next valley.
Which naturally brings us to an interesting middle ground in the framework. The plateau.
Right, the plateau.
Yeah.
Because what if I am not in a valley or a peak? What if I am just, bored?
Stuck in the middle.
Yeah. My job is fine, my relationship is fine, but I feel completely stuck in neutral. In the fable, the young man actually visits a plateau where everything is flat, the temperature is neutral, and all his friends just have these dead, numb expressions.
And the old man explains this using a heartbeat metaphor. If you look at an EKG monitor, a healthy, living heart creates a line of peaks and valleys. Up and down.
Beeping away.
Exactly. If that line goes completely flat, a plateau, it means there is no heartbeat.
It means the patient is dead.
Metaphorically, yes. A plateau is a state of spiritual or professional flatlining. Now, a plateau is entirely healthy if you use it intentionally for a brief period of rest.
Just to catch your breath.
Right. It's a place to reflect before the next climb, but it becomes incredibly dangerous if you use it to numb out, to hide from reality, and to avoid the effort and risk required to live dynamically.
Okay, I need to stop you there and challenge this entire concept of how we treat the peak.
All right, what's the issue?
If I am standing on a mountain peak, my business is thriving, but I'm constantly supposed to be saving resources and bracing myself for this inevitable fall into a valley, aren't I just ruining the peak? Aren't I creating a mental valley out of sheer paranoia? I want to enjoy the success, not live in terror of losing it.
That is a very natural friction point in the philosophy, and it requires a really careful distinction. The old man tells the young man that managing a peak is not about paranoia. It is about gratitude.
Okay, how does that look in practice?
Let's look at a concrete modern example. Imagine a software startup that just landed a massive round of funding.
The ultimate professional peak.
Exactly. A paranoid founder is constantly terrified the money will vanish. They micromanage their team, they freeze all spending, they refuse to celebrate the win, and they create a miserable, anxiety-driven culture.
So they're physically on a peak, but mentally in a valley.
Precisely. That is a mental valley masquerading as a peak. A grateful founder, on the other hand, values what they have. They throw a party to celebrate the team, they give out bonuses.
Because they're actually enjoying it.
Right. But because they are deeply grateful for the surplus, they don't blow the rest of the capital on sports cars and a fancy new office. They put the surplus in the bank to ensure the company survives the next market downturn.
Oh, I see.
Humility and preparation should be guided by a profound thankfulness for the current good fortune, not by a neurosis about the future.
That clarifies it immensely. It is the difference between hoarding canned goods in a bunker because you think the world is ending tomorrow versus just maxing out your retirement account because you are grateful you have extra income this year.
That's exactly it.
One is driven by fear, and the other is just wise stewardship of a good moment.
And wise stewardship is exactly what Michael, the man sitting in the cafe listening to this fable, desperately needs to learn. He is the bridge between this philosophical fable and the messy reality we all actually live in.
Right, let's bring it all back to Michael. He hears this story from Anne and realizes he has to deploy this operating system in his own life immediately because he is currently drowning in a massive career valley.
A really bad one.
His software company is bleeding money and outsourcing jobs. The entire office is in a panic, and Michael's ego is generating a highly fearful vision of getting fired and losing everything.
But instead of letting that fearful vision paralyze him, he deploys the first tool. He asks, what is the truth and what is the hidden good?
And the pure truth is that their current service model is hopelessly outdated. A massive competitor is crushing them.
But the hidden good, when he really forces himself to look without his ego, is that this giant competitor is spending tens of millions of dollars on marketing, educating the entire public about the need for this specific type of software.
So the market is actually expanding.
Yes. With that truth in hand, Michael gathers his remaining team. Instead of complaining about the outsourcing, they build a sensible vision. They imagine a highly specific new service model that focuses exclusively on premium quality and bespoke customer service.
Essentially riding the wave of the competitor's expensive marketing.
Exactly. They stop acting arrogant, they start obsessively listening to their core customers again, and they pivot. They turn a massive corporate threat into a massive success. They climb out of the valley by changing their internal belief about the crisis.
It is a great business application, but honestly, the part of Michael's story that hit me the hardest was his personal valley.
Yeah, that part is really moving.
Because professional problems are one thing, but family dynamics are where our egos are usually the loudest and the most destructive.
Family valleys are incredibly difficult to navigate. The emotional stakes are so much higher, which means the ego's fear response is that much stronger.
So Michael has a terrible relationship with his teenage son, Kevin. They are completely alienated from each other. Kevin just sits in the basement playing incredibly loud music with his band all day, and Michael just stews in anger about it.
That's a classic Clyde.
Yeah, and Michael's initial approach to fixing this is just a wish. He thinks, I wish Kevin would stop playing loud music and act like a normal kid.
Which, as we established with the GPS analogy, is not a sensible vision. It is just a futile desire for reality to be different than it actually is. It provides no coordinates for action.
So Michael forces himself to accept reality. The truth is, he hates the music, but Kevin clearly loves it, and Kevin is his son. So Michael creates a highly sensible vision of the peak he actually wants.
He figures out his real destination.
Exactly. He imagines the specific feeling of being a supportive dad. He visualizes going to one of Kevin's shows, hearing the crowd noise, smelling the venue, and getting a genuine hug from his son backstage. He programs those exact coordinates into his brain.
And once that destination is programmed, his behavior naturally alters to align with it, overriding his initial frustration.
Right, so he literally just walks down the stairs to the basement while the band is playing. He doesn't offer unsolicited advice, he doesn't criticize the volume, he just sits on a chair, listens, smiles, and then leaves.
It's such a small action.
It really is. It doesn't fix everything overnight, but over time, that simple, non-ego-driven consistency completely transforms their dynamic. He actually reaches the peak he envisioned.
It is a testament to the ultimate formula that Michael extracts from the story, a formula he writes down on a small card to carry in his wallet as a daily reminder.
It really is the ultimate cheat sheet. You make reality your friend, no matter how harsh it seems. You find the hidden good in the bad times. You build a highly specific sensory vision of where you want to go to override your brain's fear response.
And stay radically humble and actively grateful when you're standing on the peaks.
Yes. And finally, which is the whole reason Anne shared this with Michael in the cafe to begin with, you have to share these tools with others. Helping other people navigate their valleys is one of the most reliable ways to secure your own peaks.
It fundamentally shifts your identity from being a victim of your circumstances to an active architect of them. It requires realizing that your current situation, however painful or joyous, is not a permanent state. It is a classroom.
Whether you are currently prepping for a terrifying boardroom presentation, trying to bridge a gap with a rebellious teenager, or just feeling entirely stuck in a rut, Your current valley is just the rugged terrain teaching you the exact skills you need to reach your next peak.
It demands complete honesty with yourself and a willingness to constantly audit your own ego.
Which brings up a final thought I want to leave you with, something to really chew on as you go about your day. If you feel like you are in a perfect, unshakable peak right now in your career or your personal life, a place where nothing ever goes wrong, there's absolutely no conflict, and everything is just comfortable and easy, take a really hard look around.
You might not be where you think you are.
Right. Are you actually standing on a mountain peak, or have you just quietly settled onto a flat, featureless plateau? Are you avoiding the necessary risks and the inevitable dips that lead to the next terrifying valley and the much higher, much more rewarding peak that lies beyond it? Because as we learned today, a flat line means there's no heartbeat. You don't want to just be a victim of the weather waiting for the storm to roll in. You want to know exactly how to build your own shelter and how to climb above the clouds.